Isn't that great? You know, one of the things that I think is amazing to me, at least whenever I see, players out on the field or whatever, I can't imagine trying to play in a game like that with so many distractions. You know, just everywhere. They seem to be all over the place. You know, I mean, whether it's the fans or whether it's the calls that are being made by the referees, it could be any number of things, but distractions are everywhere, right? I want you to take about a minute and a half there at the table, and don't be afraid to just keep on eating. It's no problem today, all right? You won't distract me, all right? But here's what I want you to do. Right there at the table, if you would tell everybody at the table, what's the most distracting thing that bothers you the most, all right? The most distracting thing that bothers you the most, all right? Ready? You got a minute and a half or so, all right? Go to it. All right, you can start to wrap that up. I know that for a lot of us, distractions can come no matter where we are, whether we're at home, whether we're at work. It could be while we're driving. That's not always so good. But it can always be something that's definitely kind of gets in the way. And one of the ways that you can actually not have a distraction or to get through, especially when I think of trying to be like an NFL football player that's out there, all these things that are around you distracting you. How can you stay focused? Well, you need a game plan. Everybody needs a game plan when it comes to their life. And today, we go back to the study we've been doing from the book of Revelation. And we've been in Revelation chapter 1 and 2 the last few weeks. And we've been listening to the fact that John, who wrote the book of Revelation, he wrote it because Jesus appeared to him and gave him this set of letters that he wanted these 7 churches that were in Asia Minor back in the day. He wanted them to know what was going on and to be ready and to get ready for the circumstance and the situation they were going through. And so when you think about it, they were spoken of in that passage as lampstands or like lights. And those lights were supposed to be a bright light in the world and in the culture and everything that was going on. And so they were supposed to stand out. Well, Jesus wanted them to hear from him and see a letter that kind of explained that to them. And so that's what we're looking at today. And if you'll give me the next few minutes, we're gonna really peel this back and have something that will be very clear for a game plan for you to not get distracted, especially when it comes to what you believe and when it comes to following God and following Jesus with your life. And that's really the goal. That's really the thing that we're trying to accomplish here today. And so the game plan itself, maybe you have seen some drawings like this one. Whenever a football team goes into the locker room or they go into the planning room, they always draw up the play. And the X's and the O's are not kisses and hugs. They are actually meant to be defining who the offense is and who the defense is. And you might say, I didn't really ever pay attention that much, but it just looks like they just kind of blow the whistle and then everybody runs at each other. All right, and so if you really know, though, they have plays. Every once in a while, there's one that just breaks loose, and it's amazing how far they get to go or how far they run or whatever because they executed the play well. I remember when I was in elementary school, I played playground football all through that period of time. I loved that. Getting out at lunchtime, we got that extended recess, and we got to go out and play football. I'll never forget it. And you'd always, and so a friend of mine and I, we thought we would like draw up all of our plays, and we would do that in all the free time we had, like during math. And so we were drawing these up, and we would go out to the playground, and we would get in the huddle, and there would be all the guys that were playing, and we would have the guys out there, and we would show them, now look, on this paper, this is what you're going to do, and then we would get out, and we literally just never did one of the plays, ever. Because there was no focus, all right? There was no focus. It takes focus to get a play like this done, all right? That's really what it comes down to. That's what Jesus was saying to the church, and the church is Thyatira that we're talking to today. And they needed focus because they had gotten distracted. And let me just say this, being distracted, it can lead us to miss our greatest opportunities. It can make us miss our greatest opportunities whenever we become distracted. You think about the things in your life, go back. You ever think, boy, I wish I would have known then what I know now? But what kept you from knowing? Usually a big distraction. It was usually something that was in the way, something that caught your attention, something that got it into your mind and made you focus on too many things instead of maybe one thing that was most important. And we miss some opportunities. It's amazing, the things around us. You ever look back and say, man, I wish I'd have known that. If I'd have known that, I could have done this. I could have had this impact. And think about your own relationship with God and where that goes and exactly what could end up happening. Well, Jesus knew this was what was happening to the church at Thyatira. They were getting distracted. And so we go to the passage of Scripture in chapter 2, verse 18, and it goes like this. I'm just going to walk through this passage with you and explain just a few things. To the angel of the church in Thyatira write. We know, again, the angel is meant to be the messenger, the person who would read this letter, the pastor, the leader of the church. That's what they were being spoken of. And Thyatira was a town that was kind of like, it was an industrial city. They had a lot of, if you will, they called them guilds back then, but it would be an awful lot like our United Auto Workers or United Electricians or whatever it may be. They had many unions that worked together, and they would make those unions a place where they would not only spend time working together, but a lot of their social life was done together. So if you were one who produced textiles or fabric, or you were the one who dyed the fabric, or you got a chance to make pottery. That's the kind of businesses and factories, if you will, that were built back there in Thyatira. So it was much more of that. And it wasn't known for being this great city of churches or anything like this. So the church at Thyatira was kind of a new start. They had just come to know Christ and were trying to make their way there among a group of people that were really just irreligious completely. They didn't have any connection to God. They didn't understand it at all. And so when we think about it that way, we kind of get the idea of what it was like in the city and what the kind of people that were there. The people that were there just earning a living, trying to get by. They many times would take what they earned and spend it a lot on just pleasure, doing whatever they wanted. And that became a problem, even for some of the people in the church in Thyatira. So this is what he was supposed to write to them and tell them. These are the words of the Son of God, that's Jesus, whose eyes are like blazing fire and whose feet are like burnished bronze. If you go back in chapter 1, that's how John saw him. When he first saw Jesus appear to him, he was like, oh my goodness. And he saw these eyes. You ever had someone, and I remarked back then, but my mom had eyes like this. She could like burn a hole in you. And when I was talking or doing something I shouldn't be doing, my mom could look from 100 yards away, and literally there would be a burn mark right here on my shirt. All right? It was just that way. Let me explain it this way. That's exactly the concept. Jesus was one who had eyes that could see and penetrate into the person and into their heart, but into their mind. He knew them well. So when Jesus was walking among the lampstands during this letter that John was writing, and he would look at each one of the churches, and he would see how bright their light was or wasn't, he knew them and he knew the people that were a part of it. And so it was because of these eyes that were penetrating and these feet that wherever they went, they left a mark. Wherever Jesus went, and you know this as well as I do, that if you know Jesus in your life, you know he doesn't just come in and it's a casual thing, nothing changes. It's really meant to change your life to know Jesus. It's meant to put you on a path that you were meant to be on, a path of purpose. And so whenever we see the eyes and the feet being spoken of, it's talking about Jesus' ability to see into the lives of those people and be able to tell what was right or wrong in their lives. And he was also able to leave a mark as he would walk from place to place. So it's not a hard one to understand. The verses go on, though, and it says this: Jesus, as this one who could see what was inside them, and he was walking through Thyatira, he was thinking of this and thinking of their church and understanding it, and he looks at it and leaving a mark there, he says, I know your deeds, your love and faith and service and perseverance, and that you are now doing more than you did at first. Actually, when they first started this church, they probably didn't have as much focus on who Jesus was. And so they had to learn that as they were going. I don't know if you've ever been a part of a church that just had only existed maybe just a short time, or maybe even been a part of a church that just started. But you can imagine what that would be like. And so they were doing all kinds of good things. There was love and faith among them. There was service and perseverance. There was so much good going on. But they were tending to be a little more focused on that, and they missed something pretty big. Matter of fact, he says, you're doing more now. You're improving. You're actually getting better at this. But there was an issue, and he always seemed to find those issues. Why? Because he could see and know what they were doing. His eyes could penetrate into their hearts and knew what really was going on. So the next verse says, nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet. Now, I'm not going to go into, there's several verses after this, and I'm not going to go into all of them because it can be summed up very easily. If you remember back in the ancient Jewish scriptures of the Old Testament, you remember that Jezebel was a queen of Israel because her husband Ahab was the king, all right? And she was bad news, all right? This woman went around getting the Israelites to eat food that had been sacrificed to false gods. And not only that, but then she was telling them that it was good to practice sexual immorality right there within the nation of Israel. So when Jezebel's name is brought up here, it's a reference back to someone like that. Someone, whether her name actually was Jezebel, or whether, it's just not a name you name your new little girl, all right? But either her name was Jezebel, or there was someone of influence, a woman of influence that was there, and she had taken on the teaching of leading the church astray, that those things were okay. Be distracted. It's fun. Go ahead and be involved in this stuff. And especially when it came to the fact that they were eating this food that were sacrificed to idols. You might say, that doesn't seem like that's a big deal if I'm not sacrificing it for that. But the problem is that by buying it there, you were using your money to put it into something that was then going back into the evil practices of the community. And so he was just basically saying, look, you're doing everything you can to pull Jesus out of first place in your life and first place in the church by putting these other things as more important. And obviously, the sexual immorality, we talked about it last week, but sexual immorality outside of marriage, it's always going to hurt someone. It's always going to hurt someone. And when it's that way, you might say, how is that the case? Well, wrapping it up very simply, if you don't follow God's plan, then it's going to go against God's will, and you're going to miss the purpose God had, and that's going to lead to hurt. And so Jezebel, this woman, whoever it was trying to teach them that it was okay to be involved in these things that were so far away from God that it was distracting them. So it's kind of like this. The church had kind of gotten themselves into a place of allowing distractions. Allowing distractions then can lead us to be useless. The church became useless. There was nothing that they could do that was going to be of value. And obviously, Jesus wanted to catch their attention to make sure that they didn't find themselves so distracted that they couldn't do it. So they had no game plan, right? Their game plan got kind of messed up. Well, we go back to the passage of Scripture, and later on in all of this, he says, "Then all the churches will know that I am he who searches hearts and minds, and I will repay each of you according to your deeds." Just know this. Knowing Jesus and being in relationship with him is the greatest thing ever. And he's there to keep us on a good path so we don't find ourselves in a place where we're hurting others or hurting ourselves. His plan is always a perfect one for us. Many times, though, when we get distracted by the things that are outside of God's plan, we find that we are going to get hurt and we're going to be distracted. And quite honestly, he knows that. He can see hearts and minds, not only of the people of Thyatira, but remember, it was written to them, but for us. He can see our hearts and minds. He can see the collective heart and mind of Fair Creek Church. He can see that, I will just say. Distractions, they cause division and lead to loss. See, you ever watch your favorite team play and you say, what's going on with them? They're fighting on the sideline, or there's something going on, or you hear about the press through the week and something's happened, and they're all distracted by these arguments they're having. And then when they go out on the field, they can't figure out how to play, and it shows because their game plan was distracted and it led to loss. But it also causes division. And in a church, that's the worst thing. Jesus doesn't want his church ever to be divided on the things that matter most. And so certain things can creep into the church and actually become a distraction. When something in the church becomes more important than the one who leads the church, meaning Jesus, then right there you know someone's going to be hurt. There's going to be hurt that's going to happen. So we go back to the passage, and it says, "Now I say to the rest of you in Thyatira, to you who do not hold to her teaching and have not learned Satan's so-called deep secrets," and we keep going, "I will not impose any other burden on you except to hold on to what you have until I come." Jesus promised that he would come back someday. Matter of fact, when you read the rest of Revelation, you see some of that revealed of how Jesus will return to this earth someday. But in the process and in the time being, here's what was happening. Some people were believing Jezebel and wanting to do this. Whoever that woman was teaching in Thyatira, they were following her and wanting to do those things, and they got distracted. And what ends up happening? Well, not only does it cause issues, but Jesus says, I can see what's going on. And you're believing these deep secrets that Satan has put out there to believe, as if they're the right way to do church. That's what it's meant by those deep secrets. Many times we'll make ourselves, you say something to yourself over and over again enough that you almost believe it. You know what I'm talking about? Something that's wrong or something that's there, and you start to believe a lie in your mind so much that you think it's real. And that's exactly what some of those people did. That's what's meant by those deep secrets of Satan. And his whole point is that, you know what? I will not impose any other burden on you. If you have been able to stay away from those things, I'm not putting anything else on your shoulders. It's hard enough to plant a church and doing what you're doing and trying to keep it going than to tell you to do more or to change it. The whole point was don't get your eyes on Satan's deep secrets or this teaching of Jezebel so that you can be focused on the real game plan. We go back to the last part of this, and it says, to the one who is victorious and does my will to the end, I will give authority over the nations. That one will rule them with an iron scepter and will dash them to pieces like pottery, just as I have received authority from my Father. Jesus says there will be some day when all of this will be made right. Everything that's wrong in the world today, someday it will be made right. And when it's made right, if you're on the side that Jesus is on, if Jesus is the one that you're following and you're doing everything, then you will be on the right side of justice. And honestly, there is no reason not to live it that way today. There's no reason for the church not to have justice in mind and make sure we're doing the right things, but still balancing it with the love and grace that God gave us. Their problem was is they had started to balance it the wrong way. They'd gotten their eyes off of truth, and they had settled more on the side of love and grace. And so they led with grace, they led with love, and forgot the truth. And whenever you do that, then you have no way of introducing people or anyone else to who Jesus is. And so the church has to be cautious of that. And so he says, listen, you're going to have the same, you're going to be with me when I have that authority from Scripture. You're going to be with me. You're going to be on the side of the winning team when that happens. The verses go on, and it wraps up just like this. I will also give that one the morning star. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The Holy Spirit's speaking to the churches, but the greatest thing we're given is the morning star. Do anybody know who that is? Jesus. I heard someone say it. Yeah, Jesus is the morning star. He's that one that when it's darkest, the light comes up. It's very easy to become very distracted in the dark. And that's exactly what had happened. They had allowed darkness to come around them, and they became very distracted. And then what happened? They didn't see Jesus anymore. Let me tell you, there's common distractions that every one of us go through. Every one of us face common distractions on a regular basis. We all know what they are. You take this, and I think putting it up here like this is exactly what happens. That's distracting. I can't read that list. But that's exactly what it does. Attention from other people. I want attention. All the stuff I can accumulate. Oh, yeah, that's it. I got to have more stuff. I just don't care. I don't care. Their favorite song is Jimmy Crack Corn. You know what that one, remember? Jimmy Crack Corn. I don't care. Remember? And then comparison. Comparing yourself to other people and what they have, and comparing to think that, which leads to whether or not you're perfect or you give up on perfection. God never expects perfection from any of us. And then there's just that plain old bad thing of regret. And then let's not forget that tomorrow, many times, worrying about tomorrow is what a lot of us get distracted by. And then, of course, one of the big ones that kind of go together in a way, but fun and money. Those things can distract you more than any and keep you away from what's most important. I just say this, focusing on Jesus, it'll bring you a sense of purpose and meaning. That's what it does. So what's your game plan? What's your game plan? I want to suggest that we have a game plan here at this church. And I would hope that if we got a letter from Jesus, the same way all these churches were receiving letters, I would hope that one of the letters that we would get, what it would say in it would be that you guys, you know who your leader is. You know who your leader is. And so the first step of any game plan for us, I want it to be for my life. I want it for your lives. I want it for our church, but is to follow Jesus. That is the greatest thing we can do, is to make sure we're following Jesus. And I don't mean just say, yeah, I believe he's out there. Yes, I come to church. Yes, I'm talking about your life shows. There would be evidence in your life that you had this as your game plan. That everywhere you went, the people you interacted with, the people that were with you, they would know that you followed Jesus. And then as a church, we've kind of adopted this. If you become a partner of this church, number one part of that is to be a follower of Jesus. But the way we do that collectively together is these three things: give, serve, and love. Giving, meaning that we're willing to give of what we have so that the church can accomplish the mission and the vision of what we're here to do, leading people to a growing relationship with Jesus, and making this a place that unchurched people would come in and they would feel comfortable because we're leading with love and then living out truth so that they can meet Jesus themselves. And then serving, meaning we'll give our time and our energy and our schedule, whatever we have to do. We won't be distracted by the things that are around us all the time. We have a focus that we're going to serve. And Jesus, his whole point was to serve other people. That's the way they know that we love them, is by serving them. And so serving within the church, I'm so thankful for the people. I would say right now, make sure, if you don't know, there were people here early, all right? While you were still snoring probably, making pancakes today. Why were they doing that? They were serving us. They were serving us to make sure that we would have breakfast, have a time together. I mean, this is unique, you know? This is very fun to be able to do this. There are people serving next door and right over here with middle schoolers. And I mean, imagine all of that. That's an intentional decision, a game plan, a focus. And then love, meaning that we love each other enough that we're willing to meet in community just like you did around tables. Today, if around that table you understand how important it is to be around other people, then you know how important it is for you to be involved in a community group where you can actually share your life, share how you're growing in your faith, and be able to care for other people and be cared for yourself. That is the greatest way to stay focused. And then loving enough to remember our friends and family and coworkers and fellow students that are out there that aren't here this morning, but that could be because we invest in their lives enough that they're willing to trust us so we can invite them to join us here at the church. That's the game plan. That should be our game plan. See, I think it'd be very easy in our world today to get off track. But with Jesus as our leader, as Jesus as the one that we're following, and we're doing everything he wants of us, then we won't get distracted like Thyatira did. We don't get distracted by things like the church in Thyatira. We actually have the opportunity to make great impact because we have a game plan and we have focus. Let's stay on track with that. And I don't know what you need to do in your own life, but it may be to step up to serve. And you can do that right on the church app. You may need to get into a community group. You can do that right on the church app. You can sign up for any of that. It may be that it's time to start giving. Quite honestly, that's what makes events and things doing like this, that's what makes those things happen. That's what allows us to take care of. I got a video yesterday from Cuba, and there were about 25 kids now that their ministry has grown to. And our giving goes to that, to make those kind of ministries possible. That's what we do together. That's how we partner together. So, today, let's stick to our game plan. What do you say? And let's leave the light on. Let me pray for you. You know, God, I am so thankful for our time together. Thankful that we've had time around your word and what it means to us. So, God, I pray now that as we just take some time and we sing and we worship before we leave this place today, that we do it with open hearts, hearts that are being molded and shaped into who you need us to be as the church. And Lord, there are people in this room right now that are thinking, I know I need to be connected somehow. God, I pray that you'll connect them to give and to serve and to love. I pray for the people who are faithfully doing that. Strengthen them and help them not to lose focus and become distracted. And then, Lord, as a church, help us to stay right on track with what you've called us to do. And then we not forget it. God, thanks for a great morning. This has been fun. It's been a good time to be together. Now let us worship you with some singing today from our hearts. It's in Jesus' name I pray. And we all said,